What's up, guys? Welcome back to Sloppy Seconds, where we're talking fantasy football and the waiver wire. And let me tell you, you already missed out on all the fun.
Nice.
So we're here to give you all the information you need about our wide receivers going into week number 4. Trevor McNeil, Trademark Cast, alongside Troy Welling, Pibbb Cast. And what you got for wide receivers for us this week? Anything good?
Man, you know, there's so many good wide receivers, and I feel like that's the fun part about it this week. But one of my top tier ones is someone who should be talked about in every league is actually Chris Olavi. Minnesota's defense has been horrendous against wide receivers besides Green Bay, but that whole first game with Aaron Rodgers looked horrendous, and they don't have receivers anyways. But Philadelphia's gotten 200 yards. Detroit's gotten 200-plus yards. I love Chris Olavi because of I mean, he's gotten 13 targets in 2 weeks, but also now coming into this week, there could be no Landry, could be no Thomas. They're both questionable, both injured. Olavi is my number one guy. Like, he is going to get a lot of value. Jameis Winston, we know what Jameis was able to do. Even though he throws 30 touchdowns, he throws 30 interceptions. Like, he made Mike Evans and Chris Godwin have insane fantasy weeks. Yeah. And that's something he can do every week for Chris Olavi, especially with 13 targets consistently, at least for the last couple of weeks. Now that he's involved in the offense, the Saints are going to want to use him. They traded up for him in the draft. Like, he is going to be the focal point of the offense soon. And I think now's the time, especially at home against Minnesota. You mentioned in a couple of the past sloppy seconds that it is in London, is one of the overseas games, so it could be a mess. But I love Chris Olavi as basically the only option the Saints have.
Yeah, how hard can it be to wake up and catch a football, right? Especially if you get the ball thrown at you 13 times a game. And like you said, the trend right there of having it twice in the last 2 weeks consecutively, 13 targets, going from 5 for 80 in last 2 weeks ago, and then 9 for 147 last week. Like, an insane uptick in production right there, and it's just going to continue to go up because of, as you mentioned, those wide receivers that are questionable designations for this Sunday's game in London. My number one is going to be Gabe Davis, actually. Of course, we all know Stephon Diggs is the guy. I try not to keep it too on the nose, where it's like, yeah, obviously I'm going to start Stephon Diggs. He was a first-round draft pick. Who isn't starting Stephon Diggs? Even if he's on the IR, some people are probably still going to leave him in a starting lineup. But Gabe Davis can be my number one guy because he is wide receiver 2. Granted, he does have an injury designation going in this. I think he's questionable, but he's been at practice. He's been playing, so really not too concerned about it. Plus, Baltimore's defense is really not great. I mean, they allowed Tua to pass for like 500 yards and 6 touchdowns. Like, Josh Allen is a better quarterback than Tua. The wide receivers in Buffalo are better than the wide receivers in Miami. Yeah, I'll say it. Jalen Waddle and Tyreek, they're great, but they're not what we have in Buffalo great. This is a phenomenal offensive game for Buffalo. Gabe Davis is going to be just eating up these yards.
Yeah, and he's obviously, he was one of the fantasy hype players at the start of the season. Got injured last week, but he is always going to get amazing upside, especially with touchdowns. Obviously, in that offense, you know they're going to be coming his way. So yeah, it's a great pick there. My second option is Amari Cooper, who has obviously had a really rough start, but the last 2 games, over 10 targets apiece, has had a touchdown and exactly 101 yards in both of those games. And he is away at Atlanta. It is going to be a great game. You mentioned Nick Chubb as well in the running back sloppy seconds, but Amari Cooper, who I picked up off the waiver after week 1, after his horrendous week 1, someone dropped him. Don't do that. If you put a lot of value in your draft on a player, do not just immediately drop him, because 2 weeks after, he's been fantastic for me. So yeah, this is another easy start matchup away at Atlanta. They're not a good defense, and the Browns with Jacoby Brissett have been all right on offense, to where Amari Cooper has now had that consistency, and the Falcons defense is horrendous, so he'll get even better.
Yeah, all right enough is a good way to describe it. To give a wide receiver as talented as Cooper 10 targets and hitting the century mark for the last couple of weeks, you add a touchdown to that, you're already at wide receiver 1 numbers. A touchdown puts you over a 20-point threshold in PPR league. Like, you are golden to have Amari Cooper. Can't believe anybody would drop him. Only owned, and I say only, it's owned in 95% of leagues, but those 5% that they're not owned, if you're in one of those leagues, pick up Amari Cooper, unless it's like a 4-man league, in which case there's plenty of other options out there also, because the wide receiver pool is so deep. And if you're not in one of those 4-man leagues, if you're in a 10 to 12-man league, this is a one that has been on the waivers, that is going to be picked up quite a bit, is even on my pickup list. And that's going to be good old Greg Dork, who I had on my bench a couple weeks ago, dropped him, and has been picked up since, because I have better wide receivers than that I needed Greg for. But Greg put up 14, 15 points a couple weeks ago. Is still wide receiver 2 or 3 on this Arizona team. Even better play if Rondale Moore still is not playing. Was now listed as questionable going into this week's matchup. But there is just a little bit of an iffy around Rondale Moore. But if Moore's out, Greg Dortch just all of a sudden gets so much more value, which you could continue to stack because if people aren't paying attention and don't know when D-Hop comes back, you all of a sudden this incredible trade value in Greg Dortch that's not going to do a lot once D-Hop does come back into the starting lineup.
Yeah, but you do have at least a couple of weeks
Yes.
if with D-Hop out, and I think they have the bye week after that. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, you still have a couple of weeks of potential opportunity there. If Kyler gets even a little bit better, if he actually throws a passing touchdown, then Greg Dortch could be a great play, like you said, without Rondale Moore out. But let's go over to the no side of things, the people you do not want to start with. Trevor, if you want to start it off, go ahead.
I would love to stay away from anyone that plays in the AFC East. Primarily speaking, the two teams that are up in the actual Northeast, and that's going to be the Jets and New England, because neither one of them have a good quarterback situation right now. Mac Jones going to be out for at least a few weeks. Brian Hoyer coming back in, but has been around the league for a while. Brian Hoyer's at least 50, 60 years old. I don't know. Can't produce a whole lot. Can't imagine a lot's going to come out of this offense. It's not a very good offense as is. The wide receiver situation is still kind of a mess. I mean, they made a couple of big moves to get Nelson Aguilar and Devontae Parker up there, neither of which have done a whole lot. Of course, they did have a little bit that was able to deliver some fantasy value last week, but can't expect that to repeat. Zach Wilson coming back to the New York Jets. Of course, their offense is just the New York Jets. We saw Joe Flacco as the elite Joe Flacco throwing the ball 40, 50 times a game. Is not going to be repeated by Zach Wilson. And if it is repeated by Zach Wilson, he throws the ball 40 times, at least 4 of those are going to the other team's defense. So I'm staying away from both of these offenses, staying out of the AFC East wide receivers.
And I think that's completely fine. I mean, we don't know how good Zach Wilson will be coming back. He obviously wasn't good when he was healthy, so I don't think him being injured has helped that much. And Joe Flacco threw the ball 60 times, which meant his receivers got a lot of work.
Yeah.
I don't think Wilson will ever be in a position like that, and he's just not accurate enough. And the thing is, he might like Elijah Moore more than Wilson. I think this whole thing with Flacco and Wilson, that people want to get Wilson so bad, it's going to be a mess. It's just the Jets offense, shockingly, is going to be a mess. So I agree with that completely. The New England offense has been really bad, even with Mac Jones, and now it's no Mac Jones. So yeah, definitely stay away from those. I agree with that completely. My backup pool is also the New York Giants wide receivers. It's horrendous over there. Like they lost Sterling Shepard, the IR. Kenny Galladay literally can't catch the ball. After he got paid a lot of money, he just stopped deciding to try. And Kadarius Toney, who is amazing, just like he's just hurt all the time. So it's just been rough for the New York Giants. And Richie James Jr., if you really want to play a Giants receiver, I guess it's him. But I would just stay away from those completely. We're not even singling now. It's like entire offenses, guys.
Yes.
This week, just stay away from all the New York teams and New England. Like just back up a little bit, because it's not looking pretty in those offenses. You want to see what happens first.
Yeah, crazy the duality of that. The New York Jets, the New York Giants, the New England Patriots we're all out of. But Buffalo up there in New York also, we're all for that. This is a week to go to Buffalo for sure. On the waiver wire, though, this week to look for those pickups, of course, a lot of people are going to be looking for those Giants players because, of course, someone has to catch them all up there. Still thinking that we should avoid that. So even with Rick James, who is available in like every single league, I wouldn't touch it. Kadarius Toney, even Wan'Dale, I don't even know his last name. Yeah, that's the one. That even players picking him up, even looking for him to be wide receiver 1. I can't expect any of that's going to go well. But instead, I'm going to be looking for, as I already mentioned, Greg Dortch, owned in 14.8% of leagues. That number is still going up. Went up 5 or 6% last week. Will continue to go up from this, especially with the offense I think that's going to produce. As you mentioned, a couple more weeks before D-Hop does come back, has the opportunity to produce more value, to inflate that value, to look for some trade potential on the back end after a couple of weeks. So certainly would keep that one in mind. The other one I'm really going to put on here is Zay Jones, owned in 25.9% of leagues as of recording this video, has more targets per route run than even Christian Kirk. This is one of the most dynamic and prolific offenses in the NFL currently, which is something we never thought we'd say about Jacksonville. But Zay Jones, a quarter leagues owned, I think is a huge pickup to at least not just store on the bench, but could be in a flex position.
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, never in my life would have been like, let's all go get the
Yeah.
Jacksonville offense players. Like, and you're looking at the list, you're like Christian Kirk, Zay Jones. You're like, are you sure? Like, are these really the guys? Yes, these are really the guys you want.
Yep.
Doug Peterson has done a really good job, and I think he's just opened up the offense. James Robinson has looked fantastic. They've got ETN obviously used a little bit more, but their whole offense is now just working as it should have been with all of these options beforehand. Obviously, a lot of the receiver options are new this year, but they finally gave room for the passing game to actually be able to spread the ball out, and their running game is so good that the defenses actually do have to be worried about both the running and passing options. So yeah, love the Jacksonville options all over the place, everybody. But my top waiver wire pickup is Romeo Dobbs, which I think is going to be a big pickup. 33, just about 33% rostered in most leagues, so the highest on our list so far. But Christian Watson could be out again. You have Sammy Watkins, who's on the IR. Lazard is injury prone, and I don't know if everyone caught this, but he ended up like throwing up on the sideline during the game.
Yeah, not good.
I have no idea what's going on with him, but Lazard is a mess right now, and it basically has to be Romeo Dobbs. Like, Randall Cobb is there, but I think he's just there as like hey, Rodgers, you remember the good old days, and like Rodgers is just trying to go back to those. But yeah, Dobbs, in my opinion, has to be that target. He's got 8 targets last game and got all of them on reception. So I think he's a good pickup, and 33% means he's available in a lot of leagues.
Certainly is. Is that your internet or my internet doing that?
I think that's mine.
Okay, well, great. Either way, yeah, good insight there. Romeo Dobbs has to be, watched for one. Of course, one of those logics that's like, someone has to catch the ball. The Giants are the same way. Someone has to catch the ball, but the difference between the New York Giants and the Green Bay Packers is who's under the center. And, well, let's just say Aaron Rodgers and Danny Dimes are not the same level. I think one of them has a couple of MVPs or something, and the other one has been in the NFL for a couple of seasons. So I think I'd much rather take the one catching the ball from the MVP versus the other side. Let us know in the comments down below who you think the best wide receiver streaming options are. If you think we missed somebody, if you got a sleeper that you think we should pick up, don't tell Troy because he's in my league, and I'd much rather take the players instead of him. So, of course, leave a like, comment down below, all that information, and subscribe. Of course, if you think this is good and informing content, I do post these, or try to post these, every single week for a lot of our skill positions: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and defense. This is Sloppy Seconds. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.